Welcome back to Spa. We are rather in the dark, literally, because this is night practice. There's an hour and a half of headlight spotting. It doesn't affect the grid this session. That will be based on what we've just had in qualifying and what we have tomorrow in Superpole. But this ticks a box. It is a requirement of the regulations that each of the drivers, if the car is willing, if it's not damaged, if it doesn't have problems, must do laps at night. Now, if your car is damaged, either mechanically or with bodywork, then you can't do this. You have to go and plead your case to the stewards, but it gives everybody else a chance to go out and do some laps in the dark, John.
It does, but of course, if that car or those cars aren't able to compete, take part in this, hour and a half session in the darkness, the drivers are still not going to have the experience of driving in the dark here at Spa-Francorchamps until they get into the race itself. So it's a bit of a conundrum as to what is the correct thing to do. You don't want to deny a team of drivers who've worked very hard to get their car repaired because they didn't take part in this session tonight, then they wouldn't be permitted to compete in the 24 hours. So it's sort of it's a slight contradiction in a sense of it's mandatory, but if you aren't able to do it, you can still race.
Yeah, for mitigating circumstances.
Yeah.
Not that you couldn't be bothered, but yes, you're quite right. So it's a chance to have a look at some of the other cars. 29 there going through is the Raton Racing by Target Lamborghini. This is the Christophe Lenz, Antonio Forne, Thomas, Stefano Costatini, Alberto Di Folco Lamborghini Huracan. And it gives you an opportunity to see how dark it has become in actually not that long a space of time.
No, once the sun drops behind the forest more than anything else, then the lights go out and it is dark. There's no other sort of residual lighting around the racetrack other than the little bit of lighting that there is down around Eau Rouge and where they've got various entertainment activities taking place. You're just really dependent on the light from the cars. There's a little bit of light done as they come out of Pujol. But in fact, if you head westward, you've still got a residue of light, but once you face east, it's dark as coal. So coming down into what was Stavelot, now is Campos and Paul Frere Kolb, Christian Lenz, Raton Racing by Target. All on his own some. Nobody ahead of him, no one behind him. Can be a bit lonely at night time driving in these conditions, and you sometimes in the race you do find yourself in circumstances where even in spite of the field of cars, you've got 72 cars about to take the start. Where are the rest of the competitors? Well, they'll all be bunched up. We've talked about this bunching before. It's something that happens all the time in endurance racing, and we'll see it Saturday and Sunday, whether there's wet, dry, wet, biblical rain, full course yellows, goodness knows what might come, and the weather probably is the big talking point, and it's been so blisteringly hot all day, and it was the same here on Thursday, sorry, on Wednesday, and then tomorrow it's expected to be a little bit cooler, and that of course will then be the key of the evening will be determining the top 20 shootout. That will determine the top 10 grid positions, and thereafter anybody 21st through to 72nd, well, make or miss whichever, because Christina Nielsen will be in that 43 the Straka Mercedes-Benz. You just have to make the best of what you got.
Absolutely right. And so this, again, is one of those sessions where you just want to do the mileage. Don't be a hero. There's nothing here for a time. It's just do the laps.
If I was a team manager, what I would do is cycle my drivers through, and other than if we've got an issue and we want to try and work through that issue, I would do the number of laps that are required, and certainly in the pro cars, it's not an issue. This is fundamentally for the Pro-Am cars to give those drivers an opportunity to experience nighttime driving, especially on a circuit that is, now that we're going into the darkness, is a dark racetrack. The pro teams, all their drivers would have competed in 24-hour races around the world, so they know what it's like at nighttime. So I don't know how many cars there will be on track once everybody's completed the mandatory 3-driver, or in some cases 4-driver minimum number of laps.
And of course, for some drivers that are regulars in 24-hour races, their need to do this is perhaps less, but the regulations have to be fulfilled. So there you're looking at Christophe Lenz. He has not yet done a time. The only one that really of note has done a time is Augusto Farfus, who has done a 2:23.053. That's an interesting target, but as I say, you don't get anything for these lap times.
No, I mean, there is nothing to be gained whatsoever other than giving those inexperienced drivers track time in nighttime conditions. And of course, track time in nighttime conditions at Spa-Francorchamps, which is a major racetrack. This is not a walk in the park. It's not a little clubby at some sort of 1.5 mile racetrack. It's a serious Grade 1, Formula 1, WEC, Blancpain GT3, touring cars, British GT, whatever. It's a serious racetrack, but it's only once a year that you get a chance to drive at night here at Spa-Francorchamps, and you'll have about 8 maybe or so hours of that darkness to deal with.
You know, I'm not a pedantic person. 2 weeks ago, while you were enjoying Zandvoort and I was enjoying Silverstone, there was the 25-hour Fun Cup race here, in which the likes of Maxime Martin and Nick Homerson and who was the Mercedes driver? Adam Christodoulou all came and drove within for a bit of sneaky practice in the dark.
And what were they driving?
Those Fun Cup Beetle clones.
They must be barking mad.
I think there were 100 and something cars in the race.
What? I mean,
and, hang on, because if you think that's nuts, I want your reaction to this. Within that championship, you get bonus points, an extra 2 points for carrying a passenger. For each passenger you carry, different passenger, you get an extra 2 points. One team got 30 bonus points.
I mean, I would call that Looney Tunes motor racing. I mean, what? I mean, driving a Deux Chevaux?
No, they're like a Beetle clone.
Oh, a Beetle, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what that's going to teach you about driving your Aston Martin or your Mercedes-Benz or your Porsche, I mean, am I missing something?
There might have been an invoice involved.
Well, an invoice, naturally. But, you know, in my preparation for this 24-hour race this year, I wanted to get as much rest as possible. And I would have thought most drivers, if they weren't competing in some form of GT event or some form of motorsport, but the last thing I'd ever think about doing is competing in a 25-hour event as a preparation to come here for the 24 hours of Spa.
I mean, some this year went straight from Le Mans to the Le Mans 24 hours to the Nürburgring 24 hours. I mean, that was pretty grueling.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, okay, the levels of training and fitness these days, oh, Jordan Pepper had to go the long way around, and he had to go way off racetrack to get around the traffic that he had to come contention with.
There are drivers this weekend who are doing the Blancpain events and also the 2 French GT Championship races. So, on the one hand, you want your track time, but you must feel it on the Monday morning.
The drivers that are doing that are amateurs who are enthusiasts, and their livelihoods and their life has been built on another business or whatever they've maybe made their income out of. But I mean, for a professional racing driver to volunteer to do it, I mean, please give me strength. I mean, 24-hour races for me were in general 22 hours too long.
You were never a fan, were you?
I understood it at Daytona, where I finished third in 1988. And it's when you finish a 24-hour race that you then fully appreciate it.
Yeah.
I only finished Le Mans once. I didn't compete in 24 hours of Spa because I didn't take part in touring car racing. So, I mean, it's only when you finish that you do have an appreciation of the magnitude of the events and the achievement that you've achieved.
Le Mans was always a hard one, presumably, because it was such a long week. You had a completely non-Friday where there was no running, and it always felt very drawn out.
That was one part of it. But the other part was initially when I was doing it, it was a 2-driver car lineup. So it was if you'd finished the race, it was an 11, 12, 13 or 14 hour stint that you'd have done, depending on your teammate. Again, Le Mans and 24-hour racing back in the 60s and 70s was a difference. I mean, now, here, this weekend, this is a flat-out sprint.
Yes.
I mean, there is no quarter given. And every team is on it in a way. I mean, it's just like we talk about doing a 3-hour endurance event. This is a 24-hour sprint event. It's just non-stop, flat out at the front. Just listening to the turbos chirping on the BMW on the brakes as we drop downhill on board. Now, let's see who's the brave of the brave. Listen up here, folks. Oh, bodywork slamming into the compression.
There's commitment in this. So Farfus for BMW Team Schnitzer heads up the hill.
Yeah,
He's the fastest on a 2:22.2 now.
Yeah, no, that is not a bad time. I mean, he'll not be on tyres that he was on for his qualifying. He'll be on a set of tyres that has done a number of laps. So good run from Farfus, and having to thread his way through, again, back markers meandering around the exit of Lake Combe. So once Farfus has done his run, in fact, Jordan Pepper's just gone fractionally quicker by just over 1/10 of a second. So once Farfus has done his run, he'll come in, hand the car over. I don't know whether it'll be to Martin Tomczyk or John Edwards, but one of the two will be in the car. And going back to the comment we made, if you've done your run, the car, you're satisfied with the car, you're not still in a program of refinement or development, then park it up, chamois it off, and go and have an early night. Give the team, give the guys who are going to be up more than 36 hours from the point when they get up on Saturday morning until the point when they return home to their beds on Sunday night. So those people, give them the chance to have a decent night, an early-ish night's rest. 63 Christian Engelhardt. And that's how black it is. And even coming down towards Eau Rouge, there's a lot of residual light around from the pit lane on the left, and then on the right-hand side there's a lot of entertainment, hospitality. Sails through Eau Rouge over radio. So let's have a look and see what Christian Engelhardt is going to do in this first sector. So it's this first full-on, I think, flying lap from the young German driver. So personal best on this lap by 45/100 of a second. Looks good through Lake Combe, everything in control, no energy wasted, the car not being manhandled, which is you don't really need to do. It's not for any benefit. All you have to do is just go through the process of driving the car, doing your laps. Sometimes track temperatures drop, little air more dense, you find the rhythm. Some drivers really were very productive at night time, and this is where sort of fundamental parts of your physiology, such as your eyesight. Some drivers have got excellent nighttime vision, and around racetracks you can sometimes have signage which is reflective, and the headlights bounced off that, and that then bounces back in your eyes, and it makes your vision slightly uncomfortable. But Christian Engelhardt makes his way around the racetrack down into, coming through that way to the curb, Paul Frere. So on the exit runs the curb on the outside, perfectly acceptable, up the hill. So the V10 Lamborghini screams its way up to Blanchimont. Ought to be flat even at this time of night. So, well, I don't think that's Christian Engelhardt, unless I'm mistaken. Maybe it is, hard to tell.
It's getting a bit serious.
It didn't sound like the Lamborghini, that's why it sounded like a Bentley, no?
Well, Jordan Pepper's gone to the top.
Yeah, he's been up there for a while. Fred Makivicki's just gone second quickest. Farfus down to third. Nicky Katzberg, good job from Nicky Katzberg.
Engelhardt goes second.
Yeah, so that was a good run from Christian. He'll be pleased with that lap. So I don't know how many laps he's completed. He's on to his fourth lap now. He'll do maybe another 1 or 2 laps. Yeah. Bring it in, hand the car over to Ralph Nijken or to Americo Bortolotti.
So this is number 72 Ferrari. So this is the car of Michael Alyoshin, Miguel Molina and Davide Rigon. It is the Spanish driver, the Matador, Miguel Molina, at the wheel of it as he hustles it through the chicane. He's not yet done a lap time, but he's heading for one.
His first gear is using coming through that final chicane, and all those little different screens, which are partly, I would have thought, in the driver's eye line. I mean, obviously it makes it easier for him to see it when he's behind the wheel, but I'm not sure what they might be obscuring in terms of his vision across the front of the car, particularly to place the front wheel, the right front wheel, precisely where you would want to do it.
One of those is the rear camera, isn't it? You don't have a mirror on certain GT cars.
The camera is one of it, but there's two others which I can't. One says next, on the one on the right hand screen says next, but I can't work out what the one on the left does. So up the long Camel straight, and we saw the Ferrari just getting up to fractionally under 260 kilometers per hour onto the brakes, down a gear or 3, and the Ferrari rides the curbs pretty well. Whoa! Getting caught out slightly coming through the exit of Lake Combe. And then the run down. And just get the car, get the nose in, get it in, keep it in. That's the way you do it. Then back on the throttle, back to the right-hand side of the track, then cut back and let the car release on the exit. Don't run the grass on the outside, even though the grass is bone dry. There's enough sap still in that grass just to give you a little nasty moment. Now get the nose into Pujo, let the car run wide, then back again, and there should be no pressure or load from you on the steering wheel. The whole car, the attitude of the car in the corner should be such that it takes a natural trajectory through the exit of the corner. Then down to the fifth faff. It's nothing really marvellous. Easy to lose time though. That's one of the things. You need to be neat and tidy, maybe slowish in and get the car on throttle as early as possible. Now the exit of Paul Frere Cobb runs the car up the hill. Paul Frere, of course, very famous Belgian racing driver, journalist, bon vivant, and I thought you might say generally all-round good egg.
Indeed. And one of the prime movers in the continued history of the Spa 24 Hours. You know, he had an involvement in trying to guide it when it was in its dark days. I think it was Paul Frere that suggested the link with SRO even.
Well, that would certainly be very helpful, because to bring in the event of this caliber and this scale, this is no small undertaking. I mean, this is high-end professional motorsport with, of course, gentleman drivers and semi-pro drivers mixed in.
So more and more cycle through. David Pittard has got behind the wheel of the 36 Valkenhorst BMW. There you see a car going down that very long pit lane into the second element of it. Interesting talking to the teams about where they prefer to be. Top pits, bottom pits. My brain said you want to be in the top pits because they're nice garages, it's on a flat surface. The teams say, actually no, we'd rather be in the bottom pits, because if you are in the pit lane and you're in the top pits, certainly if you're the first garage in, you can't react to anything. But if you're still driving through the F1 pits, turning right down the other pit lane, and there's a full course yellow, or it suddenly starts to rain, you can react to that as you're doing the drive-through. Whereas if you're in the top pits, you're committed almost as soon as you come in. Yeah, so that's for sure. I mean, there's a benefit of being at the first pit lane, first pit garage as you come in. Is there a car off track kind of come back onto track, and that all looks a bit clumsy and messy. Yeah, I mean, all of a sudden, we've got a racing driver who's holding up a car that should be easily able to get through quickly and cleanly. Well, sometimes enthusiasm, which is a great thing, but judgment probably more important. Absolutely right. And again, as we keep saying, at the risk of sounding like a stuck record, don't be a hero. Just do the job. Tick the laps off, bring it in, change driver, do the laps, bring it in, change the driver, do the laps, park it. I think the difference is the top drivers got lots of time and lots of mental capacity to absorb and take in what's going on, whereas some of the less talented, maybe, of those in the field haven't got that time and space around them, and everything is happening in real time, and it's almost a matter of life and death. You think that the way that some of the reactions that they make are hard to believe, in fact. So up the hill again and coming into the final chicane, and the lights of the top pit here at Spa-Francorchamps, so it gives you a little bit more ability to pick and choose part of the racetrack you want to make your line from. So Stephen Kane, interestingly, in the Bentley has gone quickest, 2 minutes 22.088. I think, with respect, that's the Jordan Pepper time. It may be Stephen Kane behind the wheel. Yeah. Okay. So Engelhard and Billet in the Lamborghini and Porsche respectively, they're back in the pits. Farfus remains in 4th place. Andy Soucek good to go. Still quite a few yet to do a proper lap time in all of this. There's not a great sense of urgency in the pit lane. Everybody's just going about the responsibility of cycling their drivers through. We're seeing some, I think, impressive times, but looking down through, well, Nick Homerson, for example,
who's just dropped to 37th place. His best lap is a 2:26.5, and compare that against a 2:22.0, so 3.5 seconds difference. Now normally between first and 36th or 37th you would expect to see a slightly smaller gap, but that's just the difference between the top pro drivers and those that are in some of the other categories. Lewis Williamson up to 8th place in the Mercedes, 2:23.517, so he's happily making progress. It's nice to get a run where you can settle in, and where you're not actually worried about losing the peak of your tire. These drivers can stay out for as long as they like in reality. They can stay out for an hour if they want to do, as long as they've got the fuel on board. But they're not being conditioned by the pressure of having to do a lap time in a very restricted amount of time. So they can begin to build a kind of rhythm that will give them, as we watch the Herbie Porsche, or the Herbie Beetle Porsche, just getting a glimpse of the rear of it.
So who's behind the wheel of that? Because it's a venerable comment. Loic Deman, who's a very quick historic Formula 1 driver, used to have a very rapid candy livery Tyrrell, an 010, and he shares that car with Stefan Lemeray, with Mark Dewey, the redoubtable triple winner, 62 years of age.
Yeah. Interesting, just looking at Robin Frien's, Robin Frien's gone 17th. He had fastest second sector time, fastest third sector time was Miguel Molina in the Ferrari. So 11th and 12th were on pretty quick laps. It hasn't come through in overall positions, but certainly they've got themselves up into the top 15.
Actually got purple sectors, haven't we now? Molina and Friends, as you say.
The two just recorded purple sectors.
Yeah. They're getting on with the job. Lewis Williamson's up to 8th. Gally Beretta also just improving his lap time. So fascinating to see who is approaching the session in what way. Loic Deman, we are told, is behind the wheel of a car 51st. We haven't yet got to the bottom of all of this. It's entered as 1969 Tribute. That was a Porsche winning year. There's 99, which is the Rover Porsche, and straight on went. Was that the Loic Deman car? One has just gone straight on. There it is, getting back onto the road. But somebody missed their braking point completely going into the chicane.
I was looking down Tammy and scoring, wondering why Richard Leeds hasn't gone out, why Chris Harris hasn't gone out. Salikov and the Ferrari. Still 6 cars have yet to, and more than 6. We only got up to 66 in the timing and scoring. 12. Yeah. Technically
could go out, but we know that there are some with damage that won't.
Two of them were damaged.
Yeah. So it might well be that those that don't do night practice need to start at the back of the grid. We'll wait and see what the stewards decide. A very impressive run in this session by Darren Burke, who doesn't do a huge amount of night racing, but Darren Burke's 5th and heading Pro-Am.
Yeah, no, it's excellent, excellent.
Andrew Watson, I think I'd said, have improved. He's on a 2:24.463, and there up towards the right-hander of Lecom goes 37. That's the 3Y technology BMW. Jean-Paul Bouffin behind the wheel of it. That's a proper gentleman driver's squad, that, with people that have been around for a long, long time in one-make races in France, or touring car races, or in gentleman drivers series. And Jean-Paul Bouffin behind the wheel, as I say. They've also got in that car Philippe Hazebrook, who is, I think I'm right in saying, the oldest man on the grid at 64, just slightly shades.
Mere child.
A stripling.
Keep an eye, Dries van Thor. He's just gone quickest, by the way.
Sorry, yes. Forgive me.
While we were talking, he was doing purple sectors in Sector 2, gets the fastest lap of all, and the first driver to break into the 221s on a 2:21.002. Over a second quicker than the rest of the field.
Interesting, isn't it? We talk about drivers going well in the dark. Do certain cars have their own characteristics? Are some cars perhaps better when it's cooler, therefore when it's the nighttime section, and others work better in the heat, for example?
I think the level of engineering on these GT3 cars today is so sophisticated. They're generating, and we heard, I think it was Jelmer Berman describe the level of aero that these cars have got. They're generating a lot of downforce for what they are. It's more to do about, I think, the way your car uses the tyre. And for sure, in nighttime conditions, some cars that might struggle over a stint with, particularly with the rear tyre, might find the nighttime situation comes to their advantage because they're not putting the load because the ambient temperatures are lower, the track temperatures are lower. So it's that kind of thing that teams will be looking to gain a benefit out of.
There's the pit lane, the calm before the storm really this, because when the race gets underway on Saturday, and it's a slightly quirky start time because it's going to be underway at 4:30. So it's almost at the end of a long day of support race action. The pit lane is going to be hugely busy for the duration of the race. So Dries van Thor quickest, as John had said. Other improvements, Tibor Boguslavski up to 8th in the Silver Cup Mercedes. Who else has improved? We've got Molina we talked about. And then you've got to go a bit further down before you find Alex Lynn, 38th. He's just been an improver. And Andrew Watson's up to 23rd, 2:23.010 for Garage 59 in the Aston Martin.
And that Tribute 69 Porsche Cup up to, I was looking down to see it's up to 57th. 57th. Don't often get to say that.
No.
Field of cars, do you? Oh, Robin Friens pops up at the second place, directly behind Dries van Thor. Now just 0.8 of a second behind the number 2 Audi. So Audi 1 and 2. Dries van Thor back into the pit lane. He's only come in on his 4th lap. So I doubt that would be sufficient. I'm not sure. What is the requisite number of laps in the dark? Is it 5?
I think 6? It's 5, yes.
So he would need to do another couple, but an out and an in lap would probably cover that. So Dries van Thor may hand the car over to his teammates. That'll be Alex Riberas and the venerable and multi-talented Frank Stippler.
Yeah, who is as ever a man to have on your side in this race. So with just over an hour of this session to go, we're a third of the way through this night practice. There's Andrew Watson. We talked about him a little while ago and how he was improving. It's a WRT Audi 1, 2. It's a Bentley 3, Lamborghini 4, Porsche 5, Mercedes 6, BMW 7, Mercedes 8, Mercedes 9, BMW 10. But it's a very different order from how we looked in the qualifying session. There's Andrew Watson coming through Blanchimont. Andrew came out of the UK Ginetta Racing into Blancpain, but has been an ever-improving, ever-developing and very rapid driver.
Indeed, and I mean, spent time with Garage 59 in the McLaren, and the Aston program was a very appealing program to Andrew and his father, and they gave their support to it in the hope that they would get a car that would give Andrew the opportunity to really to show the talent that we all know he has, but didn't get that opportunity on a sort of a regular basis in the previous mark. So hoping for a strong result here in a car that I've been impressed with again this year, running for the first time with the twin turbo V8 AMG based engine, not the former the Soronus. I'm going to say that made a great noise. The V12 Aston Martin.
It was a cool noise.
Soronus, or whatever.
Sonorous. Symphonic. They're back into the session, one of the many BMW M6s that haven't had a lot of luck, really, in the sprint races, which includes 6 hours round Paul Ricard as a sprint for the purposes of this event. And yet, victorious last year, the real surprise, that Valkenhorst car. That gives you an idea of how dark certain sections of the circuit are. Look at that. Just try and aim for a clear bit of real estate.
Now, how would you know a car that's behind you is a quicker car?
Good question.
I don't know how you know. All you can do is stick to your line and don't deviate.
And you're dependent on your team telling you that such and such a car is closing for position and hope that they get it right.
And of course, part of the skill in endurance racing is to thread your way through the tail enders or the back markers or the competition.
Yeah.
And there are some drivers who have that skill and they exercise it. The only issue they have to be very aware of is that if a pro driver has contact with an AM, regardless where the fault actually lies, the pro driver will take a penalty. Because it is the responsibility of the pro driver to avoid contact, because he's the pro driver. It isn't always possible, but that's something the pro driver has to be aware of before he commits to stick the nose down the inside or to try and do the long way around the outside of Eau Rouge and then wonder why they both end up in the barrier at the top of Radio.
Absolutely right. More drivers cycling through now, more improvements coming. Andrea Rizzoli in his Porsche, the dynamic motorsport car, up to 26th. Renat Salikov still pressing on in the Ferrari.
And Christian Engelhard up to second place.
Yeah.
So he's now completed 7 laps on his 8th lap. So I would imagine he'll not do very many more laps before he'll come in to hand the car over to Ralph Van Eycken or to Mirko Bortolotti. So that's showing good pace. That is, the Lamborghini is showing good pace. Nico Müller, number 1, Audi in 3rd, Bentley in 4th.
Interestingly, number 9 BMW has had a little moment and been back on the road again. Eric Maris. Now remember, he stopped Q1 because of an off and damage. So Boutsen have got the car repaired. It is taking part in night qualifying, but Eric Maris has had a brief off. There's 36 BMW back into the pit lane. The Valkenhorst car of Henry Valkenhorst, Anders Buchart, the American, Don Yout, and Brit David Pittard.
Consistency is very important.
Very true, very true.
So if things are going to happen, they happen in threes.
And it was at Le Combe this time rather than on the exit of the Piff Paff. So he's exploring different options, is Eric Maris. Right, anybody else for an improvement? I know we don't have to have improvements, but it's interesting to see where they are. Winkelhock, Navarrete, Serra and Venturini are the ones that have yet to do a time.
On the subject of having little arrows around the racetrack, to me, if I, again, putting on a hat that I've never had to do in my life, but that of a team manager, and I was running a team of AM drivers, I would want that car to be so user-friendly, it could almost drive itself around.
Yeah.
I'd rather give up a second a lap for continuity and consistency than have a situation where you had a twitchy, nervy car, your drivers are afraid to turn the wheel or open the throttle. Your teams don't like to give up time because they feel that that's negative. I'd rather be negative but have a positive upside.
Yeah.
That I know my drivers are going to be comfortable in the car and they know that they're not going to get frights.
I think I know what the answer is going to be here, but did team management never appeal?
Team management? You're joking. That's too much like work. I mean, you think of all the drivers that I competed against that ended up in Formula One. They didn't know how little work they had to do as a driver and how much. And the worst thing is having been a driver, going to a team manager, and then having a whinging driver coming to you and complaining. You must be joking.
Told you, everybody. I need to get a reaction. So, right now, we have got, out of the 72 cars that are eligible to start, 68, 69, 70 venturing out, with, oddly, one that's not yet done a lap time, having just done on its first flying lap the absolute best in the first sector. Daniel Serra in the 227 Hub Auto Corsa Ferrari. That could be one to watch in this race.
I've told you Ferrari is going to be the sleeper in this race. Yeah. And I said it about every other car anyway. But certainly, I think that there are unquestionably a serious effort from the satellite Ferrari teams with the driver talent they've got. But fundamentally, the Ferrari, the 488, is a really it's the kind of package that suits the gentleman drivers, because many of them drive 488s. It's a car that it cradles them almost.
On board with Alex Riberas in the dark, 260, 261 kilometres an hour, and building, the graphic goes, but he's still accelerating.
Yeah, so that's the quickest of the cars.
Way up the curb in the middle of Le Combe. There's some energy in that lap.
Yep. So back to La Source. 55 minutes time left, so...
That's 2:27 we were talking about earlier, and its lap time, its first flying lap from Daniel Serra, has put it only 41st, actually, despite the fact it was really good at the start of the lap. Alex Riberas has now done an absolute best within Sector 1 himself, so the Audi, currently quickest in this session, is looking as though it could go quicker still.
Very good. Good job from Alex Riberas, because he is overshadowed frequently by Dries van Thor. But given his own chance, and he's got a clean run at the minute in Sector 1, so that's a very good Sector 1 time. There's the Ferrari that Daniel Serra is driving. We thought maybe that was going to be a car that would be top 10 possibly in his first flying lap, but it didn't translate in the final 2 sectors of the lap. So Alex Riberas currently quickest overall sector 1. Nothing fantastic in sector 2. So let's see what he does at the conclusion of the lap to see if they can improve on that 2 minutes 21.002 second. Love that corner. Love that corner. When you're at one with a racing car, it's corners like Pujol that make you feel, isn't it? Well, I wouldn't want to be a team manager. That's why I'm a racing driver. You know, there's certain aspects and certain times when you drive a racing car, certain circuits, certain corners on certain circuits, and you really think, what a fortunate person I am to have this as a profession. I mean, I could have been a divorce lawyer, you know, but gone into another life.
Yes.
How miserable would I be?
By the way, no divorce lawyers were hurt in the making of this broadcast. We briefly had a yellow flag out in Sector 2. That's gone, so whoever went off the road is back on again. One car is under investigation for speeding in the pit lane, and it's the 1969 Tribute Porsche, the Demain Lemeray Douai Angelique d'Etavernier Porsche. As way up the curb skips Daniel Serra there.
Well, let's see if Daniel Serra can get a lap that he can sew together and actually get himself from 43rd up to quickest.
Wow.
Well,
that's something, isn't it? 2 minutes 20.813. Daniel Serra doing an excellent job. His dad, Chico Serra, briefly a Grand Prix driver. That's Stephen Kane having a word with the incoming Jules Gounon, who's about to get back into the car. Jordan Pepper standing to the side as well.
I'm not sure what Stephen's trying to communicate.
Doesn't look the happiest of camps.
No, it's sort of, look, he's talking about foam pads or
Stephen's cushion.
Stephen's, yeah, whatever. And all 3 drivers contributing in that conversation. So the car back in the garage.
I like the luminous front.
Yeah, I like that. But all 4 benches got their luminous fronts, and it's certainly very eye-catching and gives you an opportunity to. I mean, you can't see everything. You're blinded by these headlights. So Stephen's still banging away to Jules Gounon. So whatever they're talking about, pointing down to that. Yeah, look at what you're talking about, Jules. You know, and I don't know what goes on in a garage when the old blood gets pumped up. The blood pressure rises, the old static, and then the heart rate goes up with it as well. Sweating buckets on this very humid evening here in Spa-Francorchamps. Even the cameraman's got a fit of the head staggers as he swings around.
Do you remember a while ago we talked in the qualifying session about Fred Macavicki being losing times, steward's decision, whichever number it was. He clattered into a bronze driver at turn 14, which is Campus. And car number 36, Don Yount, was up before the stewards at the end of qualifying, and he will get a drive-through. No, he won't. Tell you a lie. He'll get a 5-minute stop-go during the race. I need to just weed out some of the extraneous chat here, but he drove in the wrong direction from one corner to another, having had a spin. But not just turn it round in the wrong direction. Quite a considerable period of time in the wrong direction.
Oh, we go over the top of radio. Wow.
And there's a car off
two cars of contact.
Yeah, one spun, isn't it? 488 is one of them. I think that's the one that's facing the wrong way, the Ferrari of Martin Berry. That's not 488, is it?
Can't read it. We haven't the pixelation on the screen.
Yeah.
We can't get that detail. So
we know that Eric Maris has had another spin. That's the AMG Acker garage.
Just sitting quietly, you know, stay calm.
Keep cool.
Keep cool as you can. Wearing your race overalls, your race underwear, gloves. Obviously expect to get into the car very quickly indeed. You wouldn't be hanging around dressed like that otherwise. 50 minutes of this session remaining.
Marcus Winkelhock's just up to 6th with the Santa Lock Audi.
Yeah,
222.103.
up to 9th.
Yeah. Interesting to see what's quick in the cooler, dark section of the day, because that could be a taste of what you get in the race. Assuming it's dry.
According to the weather, it ain't going to be dry. But, you know, weather forecasters, like racing drivers, not known to be always.
They have their moments of inaccuracy. Yes.
Yeah.
That's sent for Andy Prio. He was a powerboat champion, wasn't he, before he went hill climbing? We might need him in the wet. 49 minutes and change are on the clock. Angle we talked about. Winkelhock can improve as well. Right, that's 5.63,
yes,
which is currently being driven by Marco Mappelli, 39th. Another experienced driver, Marco Mappelli, raced GT and single-seaters for decades. Australian Formula 3 champion for a time.
Very strong lineup in that 5.63 Lamborghini.
And actually, it's not really sparkled today, but you know it's going to be good in the race. They've not gone chasing times, it doesn't seem. They've got on with the job of getting a car that's going to be quick for the race.
I mean, I don't know. Everybody wants to have their product in pole position because it's a showcase for the manufacturers. At the end of the day, how many races in Spa, 24 hours, have been won from pole position?
Is that a test for me?
No, it's not.
Gosh.
It's not. I mean, I haven't got a clue. And you have to go back through the last 20 or so years to... But in a field that is so competitive, whether you're on pole position or whether you're on the third row of the grid, almost to me is academic, because the thing that's going to win this race is the least amount of time spent in the pits.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's all it's about. Just the least amount of time you're off the racetrack. The guy that, or the team that does that job better than the rest will be the winner.
Yeah.
That's all you have to think about. So look at this all over the shop. What is going on?
Mappelli carving his way through the traffic. Squeaky brake or what?
It is a squeaky old brake, isn't it? Marco Mappelli.
Rick Brokers has just got his Audi up to 9th, the Dutchman, the Flying Dutchman. And Squeaky Marco carries on. Is that a concern?
No.
No.
No, it's just the material and the pad and just whatever the contact with the disc. These are steel brakes, they're not carbon fibre brakes.
Interestingly, I mentioned that Eric Maris had a second spin. That incident is being looked at because apparently number 4, the Stoltz, Engel, Burman Mercedes, was involved in it as well.
What do you mean they spun the Mercedes?
There was an incident between the two.
Okay.
And the BMW spun and the Mercedes didn't.
Well, I mean, that has to be reviewed and the evidence will be examined, and the judge of...
The stewards will deliberate.
The stewards will deliberate, yes. They've been busy tonight.
They have. Yeah. They have.
And it's been a long day. This is everybody's here first thing in the morning. We're now coming up to 10 to 11 at night time. We've still got 45 minutes and a bit over that to go. And then you just don't drop everything and go home. No, the stewards prevail upon the... Well, they've got to stay. If there's any issues to be dealt with, they've got to deal with them.
Absolutely.
Before they can head back to get a bit of kip.
The race director, even though he's had a long day, once the session is done and anything that's been referred to the stewards needs referring, that's kind of him done. He's in charge of what's going on the track. All the judicial stuff gets passed on to the stewards.
And to the stewards.
And there are teams of the stewards, so they get a break, and adjudicators, they go through the race.
Yes, I think there are 5 of them here this weekend.
It's a thankless task, as being any race official is, really. But Greg Masters and his guys do a very good job.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's a thankless task in many respects because you're being a kind of policeman in a sport where we don't want police.
Now, we've been talking about Aston Martin. Ferdinand Habsburg, Aston Martin driver, is in the pits with Ryan Marine.
Ferdinand Habsburg drives for our motorsport in DTM. You're here with the team in an Aston Martin here at Spa as well. What has it been like jumping in a GT3 car around this place with a grid that's a couple times bigger than what you see in DTM?
It's new, you know. It's kind of like taking a step from F3 to DTM. It's a whole nother world again. The caliber of race car drivers here is unbelievable, and the whole event has felt really special. It's actually my second 24-hour race. I did Daytona with Chota, so it stayed a little in the family, which is nice. But this again is something completely new. It's really, really dark. I'm gonna have my first few laps in the night soon. It's been tough. If I won't lie, I've done like 10 or 11 laps today, which is weird. Normally I do get, you know, quite a lot of running. But the team is really helping me out a lot. The drivers have done a good job, and I think when we qualified today, it's not a bad place to be. There's a lot of good cars around us.
when you turn your first night laps, what are you hoping to learn? What can you pick up in this night practice session?
I think you've got to relearn your brake points. That's number one. Obviously, the car reacts differently. It's a lot cooler. The track is cooler. So I haven't driven at this cool circumstances with this car ever. You know, I've only driven it at the test before. So new experience. Things like the bus stop chicane, turn one here, making sure those references are fixed, that I can have a consistent night race.
Lastly, for folks at home who might be curious, how different is a GT3 car to drive than the DTM car? Can you compare and contrast the two?
It's a lot lighter, the DTM car. It's a lot more from the ground up based around a racing car. This is a road car with loads of racing car bits on it, and it goes super fast. So you can feel the difference through the stiffness because it's a full carbon fiber chassis. It's still a great thing to drive, but DTM is fractionally a bit more raw to what I'm used to. The power is slightly different. We don't have traction control, we don't have ABS, so it is a bit easier to make a mistake. But the races are only 1 hour. And so it's a pure sprint race with one pit stop. Whereas this is 24 hours, flat out, and 72 cars. I only have 18 or 17 cars to beat in DTM, so it's completely different game. If I'm honest, this has been the hardest weekend this year so far. So DTM is tough, but like energetic-wise, it's taking a lot out of me. But I got a good night's sleep, and tomorrow a relaxed day, and I'll be ready for the race start.
Seems like you're having fun. Great to have you here. Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Ryan, you've just earned yourself a 5-minute stop-go penalty, I'm afraid. I was relying on you when you were talking to Ferdinand Habsburg to offer up his full name, because Ferdinand Zvonimir, Maria Balthaus, Keith Michael Otto, Antal Barnum, Leonard von Habsburg Lothringen was the man you've just been hearing from.
Sounds a very posh young man. What I liked was it very analytical, very articulate, and analysing, you know, the differences between the DTM car, which is a pure race car. As he pointed out, GT3 cars are production cars, adapted, albeit they're very, very highly developed cars. And again, you know, going through the process of nighttime driving, the different conditions, what that does to the track, to your tyres, to braking distances. And going back to the comment I made much earlier, some drivers actually thrive in nighttime conditions. They actually almost seem to blossom, which was what you wouldn't expect at nighttime, where other drivers, there's that little thing of not being able to be as committed as they would do in daylight hours when they can see. They've got better, it's the peripheral vision, I suspect. That probably is the inhibiting factor for some drivers. The lack of it because of nighttime.
Of course, indeed, indeed. So Ryan Marine doing excellent service for us in the pit lane, and a Spa rookie soaking up the atmosphere. It was a fair old schlep because he lives near Indianapolis, but he was absolutely buzzing last night when he got back from the parade, and now we've thrown him into the pit lane. I think he's having a ball.
Well, I mean, Indy in itself is a massive event, and I mean, the hoopla that goes on with that event, I mean, it's not a lot different. This is a week-long event now, so the parade and all the involvement in the community and bringing the community to the race, as well as expecting them to just rock up and watch an event. So it is a very special involvement, and of course everybody is very happy to embrace it. So a couple of El Bamber up to 4th quickest by the way. I saw Maxime Soulet up to 8th, and at one point I was looking down the timing and scoring, and Alessandro Perguidi in the Ferrari also. So Sam Bird's taken that car over. So that 51 Ferrari, Sam Bird behind the wheel. The time was established by Alessandro Perguidi. Still, it's Nick Foster's gone quickest overall.
Well, no, it's the Daniel Sarikar, he's down behind the wheel. Yeah.
2.27. And Mirko Bortolotti second quickest in the 63 Lamborghini. Frank Stippler 3rd in the car that the time was established by Dries van Thor. No, that was Alex Dries van Thor.
The Honda of Mario Farnbacher is improving as well, up to 22nd. We talk about improvements, they are of interest, academic interest only, but it's just nice to observe who is improving the lap time. Maxime Soulet, John had already touched on. There are others coming in the sectors. So it's almost a nice temperature now, finally. And
I tell you what, when you get downstairs, it'll be like an oven.
Yeah, you're right.
Up here it is in the press room and the commentary booths just off the press room, there is an element of aircon, but as soon as you step outside, you'll realize it'll be a bit of a hot night tonight, I think, when we get to bed.
So 39 minutes are still on the clock, and the team's cycling through their drivers. Andy Merrick, currently 57th for Team Parker Racing, Stuart Parker's squad, back after his sizable accident here last year. The slowest that we've got currently number 21, and that is Francis Tiger. So he is, as I say, the slowest. Now, assuming that he's not going to be deafened by GT cars going past. Ryan, your first visit to Spa, first visit to the 24 Hours, something a bit different. Your thoughts so far? Are you enjoying it?
Oh, how could you not enjoy an event like this? This is absolutely tremendous. It's been a bucket list item of mine for a very long time. I always figured it would come as a fan, not standing down here in pit lane. This is absolutely amazing to have so many cars, so competitive. The driver lineups are absolutely tremendous. And it's really a who's who of GT racing, so there's a lot to love. Maybe the weather would be my only complaint, my only gripe. I think it was 41 degrees Celsius, which back where I come from is like 106 degrees Fahrenheit. That's just silly. So to John's point a few moments ago, it is hot down here, it's true, but I'll take these conditions we have right now over what we were experiencing this afternoon, and I think the drivers would agree.
Ryan, it's John. A question for you. A great 24-hour race here in Spa-Francorchamps. You've also got a great 24-hour race in Florida, Daytona 24 Hours. Have you been there? And if you have, how do you compare those two events?
Well, I'm going to wait and see how this weekend plays out in full, but I have been able to be at the last three Rolex 24s in Daytona. It's a really cool event. There's no doubt you get some real star power there. I would say, though, this is more sports cars in their natural environment, sports cars in the wild. I don't feel like they quite fit at Daytona, albeit that event has a great deal of history. This just feels right. Something about these cars and this track, it's tremendous, and the atmosphere is great. I can't wait to see what it'll be like during the race with the stands packed and the grid packed just before the green flag. It's going to be awesome.
And what kind of following back home does this race have, Ryan? I mean, is Spa 24 one that has much awareness in America, or is it a hidden gem for you guys?
Among enthusiasts, yeah, they know Spa, but unfortunately, and this is something we're working on the Blancpain GT America side of things,
sure,
just trying to get more awareness of sports car racing and GT racing more generally in the States. Right now, frankly, stock car racing and to a lesser degree open wheel racing are what people think of when they think of racing in America, but we've got some really good sports car racing championships, and SRO America is a big part of that. So again, to answer your question, I would say general public, this probably wouldn't resonate, unfortunately, but we're doing our best to change that. That's my mission, at least.
Ryan, just to go on to the atmospheric side of Spa, have you yet had some Belgian frites and mayonnaise? And because David is a major Belgian beer fan, have you had your first Belgian beer yet?
I, in fact, had my first Belgian beer with David when I arrived to the hotel. So that worked out nicely. He was sitting outside and was kind enough to offer me one of his. Did so before I knew how much they meant to him. So if I had realized what he was sacrificing and giving me one, I might not have been so keen to take it. But it was delicious. I'm still working on the frites. I'll confess to not being a big mayonnaise fan, but I suppose when in Rome or when in Spa, you got to give it a try, right?
Absolutely. Right, we'll leave you to your pit lane patrols. Talk to you later, Ryan.
Thank you.
So, Ryan Marine, who is the pit lane voice of Blancpain GT World Challenge America. We're delighted to have him here at Spa this weekend, and you might have gathered he's pretty chipper about being here as well.
Absolutely, but I mean, the enthusiasm I think that Ryan is bringing, obviously it's a major event, he's set on his bucket list, and to be down in the pit lane, mixing with the crews, with the drivers, with the best GT cars in the world, competing for 24 hours at Spa-Francorchamps, it's a dream come true.
Absolutely, absolutely. So 35 minutes of the session to go. Felipe Fraga, I know you get excited about Felipe. His Mercedes is up to 5th in the dark, 221.385. And this is René Rast's headlights that you're looking at. And then the tail lights, number 1 Audi, which is 8th in the DTM champion and Carrera Cup champion's hands. He's a winner of this event, of course, René Rast.
Yeah, Felipe Fraga, obviously coming from Brazilian motor racing, stock car racing, which is a form of saloon car racing they have in Brazil. Slightly blotted his copybook at Zandvoort a couple of weeks ago when he went off around the back of the circuit, and the number 90 Mercedes suffered a bit of damage, which of course with the proximity of this event is something the team doesn't need. So a lot of man-hours had to be mustered up to get that car turned around, prepared. But he is one of those drivers who I think is an exciting race driver to watch.
Yeah.
He reminds me a little bit of Raffaele Marciello, very free-spirited, and nothing actually seems to faze him.
René Rast is another very, very impressive driver. And whether it's been in Porsches or GT3 cars or sports prototypes, of course, he graduated through LMP2 to the final members of the Audi LMP1 program and then into the DTM. It's quite an interesting route that Audi took to get into the DTM, because after all his Porsche success, he was overlooked for a DTM drive because he didn't have enough aero experience. They wanted people from F3 with aero experience, so he was sent off in a different direction. Go and learn, and he learned, and he came back to the Audi ranks of the DTM, therefore, and won the title.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to explain what this aero experience is all about. And I mean, talking to Frederick Hapsberg, you're driving a DTM car, which is a pure race car. Okay, it's built around very restricted rules and regulations. Nevertheless, it is a pure race car, carbon fiber tub, but there the fireworks are already beginning. It's not the end of the race, we haven't even started the race, but it's part of the fun and games. But it is that difference, and the level of aerodynamics on those DTM cars is even greater than it is on these GT3 cars here at Spa-Francorchamps. And these cars are evolving and evolving and evolving. And the way I look at it is we've got GT4 coming along as an accompaniment in many of our events to the GT3 rounds. And the GT4 cars are probably about 4 years or 5 years behind where the current GT3 car. So the evolution of GT3 has been so rapid that, I mean, GT4 cars are probably lapping much within a second or two of what we were getting 5 years ago. And given another 5 years, GT4 probably is going to be knocking on the door of where these cars are right now.
Yeah, exactly right. So progress continues, and many of the manufacturers we've seen bring in upgrades or evolutions on the next generation Audi, the second generation Bentley, Ferrari have gone from the 458 to the 488. Porsche keeps pushing on with improved models. No one's standing still.
Looking down in the top 36, how many of the driver-car partnerships have not done many more than 4 or 5 laps? I mean, the quickest car right now, the Ferrari 227, appears to have only had, just look at the scene, I'm looking at the wrong lap. Okay, 10 laps. So I'm looking at the faster lap and the fast. So you've got to have 5 laps, you've got to do minimum 15.
Absolutely.
So a lot of those driver pairings are barely into that 15 lap minimum. Others are just slightly above it, and I wonder how many more laps they'll want to do in the darkness.
Interesting, isn't it? There you've got Nick Cassidy in the car that's fastest, just starting the stint. Andrea Bertolini, hugely experienced driver. He's won this event before, on his way to winning FIA GT titles in the days of Maserati MC12. With Michael Bartels. Wonderful car, brilliant car, in that very evocative Vitaphone Racing colour scheme. And there a little bit of a wobble as he goes down towards Bruxelles.
One of those drivers who has been a part of the Ferrari family for so many years. And I mean, I spoke to him the other day again at Zandvoort, and he hasn't changed. No. When I first met him back in the late 27, 28, and just unchanged 10 years ago.
Very, very quick driver, barely makes mistakes. And Fred Verviche, up to 9th fastest, winner of the Nürburgring 24 Hours this year, the Belgian driver.
A lot of rubbish down at the 5th lap. People are dropping wheels over the apex going into it, and that's getting kicked up onto the circuit. And it's those kind of things that you have to, I mean, it's difficult to see it at night time, because unless there's a lot of light around you, you can arrive on that part of the racetrack and suddenly wonder why you got a serious lack of grip.
So they've got the grunt and go Mercedes going ahead of the Ferrari up towards Blanchimont. Andrea Bertolini will fall away here, but he'll just tick off another lap. So it's Ferrari, Lamborghini, Audi, Porsche, Mercedes, Audi. Lamborghini, Audi, Porsche for your top 10 at the moment.
Of course, none of which is having any relevance whatsoever.
Doesn't affect the grid. There is the black Spirit of Race AF Corsa Ferrari Andrea Bertolini Bales, and he comes. Driving that car with Nick Homerson and Louis Machiels, plus Tony Villander. So it's a very competitive car in Pro-Am.
Well, that's right, Tony Villander, major star in a Ferrari for many years.
Yeah. In the early days of Blancpain, when it was the Blancpain Endurance Series, Louis Machiels was given a black flag for an infringement and ignored it. The radio wasn't working, he said, and Eduardo Freitas, then the race director, in the end completely lost his rag. And when Louis Machiels finally did come into the pit lane, having had mechanics virtually fall over the wall to wave at him, Eduardo was there to greet him, and the car did not go back out, and he was given a stern talking to say the least.
Yeah, and Eduardo has got that quality, Portuguese, great race director as well, and understandable, rightfully too.
Yeah.
I mean, racing drivers will pull every stroke they can get away with, and on some occasions maybe the radios and the communication, but there are visual communications from the pit wall, so it's hard to say you didn't see your pit wall, exactly. Because if you haven't got radio communications, you're then wholly dependent on the pit wall to give you information.
So there's Lucas Stoltz. Now, we were talking in qualifying about Stoltz developing into a real hero in Mercedes, and he runs a little bit wide up the curb there, plunging down the hill once more. But Stoltz in this session, that car is 17th fastest. He just gets on with it. He doesn't have perhaps a hugely demonstrative personality, but you put him behind the wheel of a race car, he delivers.
Absolutely, but I mean, again, same with the driver lineup on that number 4 Black Vulcan Mercedes. They just get on with the job.
Yeah.
There's no hoopla, there's no sort of showbiz about the operation. It's just a very well-run, head down, get on with the job.
Black Falcon is a team based near the Nordschleife, but it's actually run by a Brit, Sean Breslin Jr. His father used to race Renaults predominantly in the late 80s, early 90s, and Sean has done a really good job running this team, based, as I say, for VLN events, and more recently into Blancpain GT racing, and now attracting the backing of Mercedes to make it a pucker Mercedes AMG team.
Yes, I mean, I suppose ACA is considered to be the principal of those Mercedes-backed teams, but Black Vulcan and the number 4 car in particular, any day of the week are capable of winning and beating all the other Mercedes.
And specialising in gruelling races at gruelling tracks, if you think about the Nordschleife for the VLN. There is number 4 Stoltz through then. The cars all with these different colour schemes for the purposes of this weekend. And with just under 27 minutes to go, the time still topped by the Ferrari. El Bamba's on a bit of a move because he's doing personal bests. 70 cars we've had out of the 72. We may have had, in fact, the others, but they haven't crept onto this last page of the timing. So it's as full a house as we can get. Did number 17 Audi go out? The Alex McDowell car, no. So that was too badly damaged, seemingly.
Yeah, if there was any structural damage, then that's going to be a different kind of repair that would be in order, and that again is something that we saw a concerned look on the face of Thierry Tassin, so there may have been something more substantial to move the tire bail, as we saw, and if you get into contact with the metal barrier, it doesn't take an awful lot. The wrong angle is enough to sometimes tweak a suspension location, a suspension mount.
Now, Fabian Schiller was looking pretty impressive during qualifying, and for the ACA ASP team, he's in the pits with Ryan.
Fabian Schiller driving this weekend here in Spa for ACA ASP. How has it gone so far for you guys? Does the Mercedes suit this track nicely?
Yeah, I mean, usually the Mercedes suits every track, so of course it's fun out here. We didn't have the best of a day so far, struggling a little bit with one lap race. But yeah, we will see. I mean, the race is long, the weather predictions are very, very crazy, and we're gonna see how it ends up. Today, quali was for sure not the best, but I mean, we will be strong for the race anyway.
It has to help you. I know you always want to be fast, but you know race conditions are not going to be like what we qualified in, so maybe it doesn't feel quite as depressing as it would have otherwise.
Well, for sure, we would have preferred to be up there in the rankings, but I mean, it is what it is. We're gonna focus on the race now, try to do our best, get the car ready. We do some last checks now in the dark, lights position and also car balance, and should be fine. I'm confident. I mean, I have great teammates, a great team behind me. Mercedes-AMG has a great brand. So I think, yeah, when the race comes, nothing can go wrong, to be honest.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Fabian Schiller, one to watch when we get to the race. Somebody that's made this adaptation from single-seaters to GT cars and has done very nicely indeed. Earl Bamber continuing to push on in the number 117 Team 75 Bernhardt Porsche. And who else is looking pacey? Relatively few. Oh, Nicky Thiem, yes, as ever, Nicky Thiem has just gone a bit quicker. He's only 34th, but shaving a little bit of pace out of that Pro-Am Aston Martin.
You know, it was interesting, Fabian Schiller just saying about car balance in nighttime conditions, and also, you know, the position of headlights to make sure that they get the maximum benefit from not just the principal lights, but they've got some supplementary lights, as most teams do in 24-hour events. On the car balance thing, there may be differences between daylight and nighttime driving. I wouldn't anticipate a team making a conscious, you know, aerodynamic change to the car for nighttime. So maybe they're looking for something in between where it is a compromise between day and night that hopefully will be good for everybody.
So just over 22 minutes still to run. Nicky Thiem goes for the pit lane, so his work for the moment is done. And who else might be on for an improvement? The slowest car, by the way, is the number 21 Open Road Racing Porsche of Michael Soregiaia, Antares Au, Francis Tiger and Remo Roschiti. Drivers new to the 24 hours all. Kevin Est, fastest, 220.290. Out of nowhere, Kevin Est bangs in a lap, 0.277 of a second quicker than anybody else. Boom.
Reverend Kevin lives up to his name.
Absolutely right. So that car was a long, long way down the order, and up to the top of the times goes Kevin Est.
I mean, when a driver or car combination goes and does a time like that, wonder why. And my reaction would be, apart from the obvious ability and skill of Kevin as a driver, the magnificence of a Porsche, I just wonder, he might have had a fresh-ish set of tyres.
Yeah, it's possible,
the thing that makes the biggest difference in any form of GT racing is who has got the freshest set of tyres will end up quickest.
Yeah. The circuit, I can't say it's empty, I can't say it's clear, but it's got a reasonable number in the pit lane, which helps as well. There is 23, which is the Tech 1 Racing Lexus. This is the car that Bernard Delhay is currently driving, but he shares this with Eric Queiroz and Timothée Bouret and football hero, goalkeeping legend, Fabien Barthez, who is no mean racing driver, part of the French World Cup winning squad for many years at Manchester United. Good lad. And Fabien Barthez, part of that team as well. It's his investment for the Abadis that run the squad, Simon and Sarah Abadi of Tech 1 Racing. Right, 88 is about to go down the pit road and back into the session. It's not had a great day, this car, but fingers crossed it will be there at the end of the race, well placed. Raffaele Marciello shown as being behind the wheel as he rumbles down the pit road. So improvements few and far between at the moment. St David Pittard back out in 36 BMW. That car getting a stop go, a 5-minute stop go early in the race. Right, Andrea Caldarelli's just improved to go 5th on a 221.3. And Nick Cassidy, an absolute best in the last sector.
Yes, interesting that Cassidy's just all of a sudden popped in a purple sector time on what is that car's 16th lap. So we're looking at René Rast and the number 1 Audi down in 10th place. Not something that. And look at that! Look at the orange from the tailpipes that normally aspirated V10. How lean can they run these modern racing engines? It's just absolutely unbelievable. Fantastic, you know, just looks great.
There is Rast charging on. Hooks a gear, or paddles his way up to another gear, in truth, and storms on. Another improver is Josh Burden's Nissan. 32nd he is, 3rd generation racer. Dirk Werner's Porsche goes quicker, up to 24th.
Struan Moore on the 22 Honda up to 44th, and that sort of doesn't sound really anything other than 44th, but they will just, again, this whole metronomic thing, Bob Neville, the way he runs his team, he knows the whole thing is about reduction of time in the pit lane.
Absolutely.
Make no mistakes, no driving errors in the pit, no driving errors. Now there's is that a slightly, I was going to say it was a bad release. Maybe they got checked up on time not to.
Yeah.
Could have been a dangerous release in the pit lane of the Aston.
Hugo de Sadalier going out in that car.
Got a long old name, hasn't he?
Who, Habsburg?
Oh, Habsburg, but Habsburg, not de Sadalier. Yeah, I mean, he's got about, well, he could be almost Hanoverian royalty. It's up, down through Eau Rouge and up over the top of Radio. Always a helter-skelter of a ride.
Alex Lynn improving in sectors. Dirk Werner's improved lap time I've given you. And Hugo de Sadalier back out, as you saw in the Aston Martin. His younger brother races, and his father used to be a GT racer, going back to the 90s, the early days of the BPR GT Championship. Stanislas de Sadalier would be on an SRO grid. So where's the next?
There's Tomczyk in the BMW. I wonder why it was travelling so rapidly. So Martin Tomczyk. Don't get to see him too often, and Blancpain GT3 comes in for these longer events, certainly Spa 24.
Yeah, he's been racing in the WEC, but of course BMW's pulled that programme now, so it's going to be interesting to see what the, apart from the DTM, what the motorsport activity is going to be now.
Well, I don't want to mention the, you know what, all the manufacturers being whatever.
That very quiet championship, yes. So Tomczyk out of the Piff Paff, won the DTM for Audi and was then released, so found a happy home at BMW, and it's actually given him greater opportunities, not just the DTM but sports car racing as well. His father, a prime mover, Hermann Tomczyk, within the German motorsport federations. Tomczyk goes through. This, the view on board the BMW up through Blancpain.
It still is a great endurance car. I mean, won here last year, the Valkenhorst BMW, against, I would imagine, everybody's expectations. But you put in good drivers into that car, it's a very, very effective long-distance endurance race car. Got an unbelievable engine installation. Twin turbos and the thing, you can find them because it's buried so deep just underneath the front bulkhead.
Now, we were talking earlier about the Hub Auto Corsa Ferrari. One of its drivers is Nick Foster. He's with Ryan.
The Total 24 Hours of Spa is, of course, part of the Blancpain Endurance Cup, but it's also part of Intercontinental GT Challenge. The previous round of the Intercontinental GT Challenge was the California 8 Hours. Nick Foster was one of the winners there. You're the only one left from that lineup, though. You got to learn a bunch of new faces here.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of the way it's rolled. Obviously, Tim's got his V8 clash, and Molina's had to step into his full-time seat in endurance. But to be honest, I'm stoked to welcome Cass, who's an old friend, and Daniel, who's a world-class driver, to the squad. They've been great additions. I mean, they're doing a super job. Qualifying went really well, so no complaints from my side.
Yeah, you could do a lot worse than the guys you've drafted in. They're definitely on top of their game, but how about you? What has this experience been like? The heat, looking ahead to maybe some rain this weekend. You're going to get a little bit of everything.
Yeah, obviously for me it's been the first 24 hours of driver. Nick also, and again for the team, another new track for us as an organisation. So we've just been chipping away at it day by day. At the moment it's been a hot day. We've had to work. Importantly, we try and get into the top 20, so we've done that. We did quite a good job. Quite happy with the performance of the car. Now we focus on a little bit of race stuff, and then we just see what happens tomorrow. I mean, is it going to be dry? Is it going to be wet? I didn't expect it to rain today, but it hammered down, and yeah, so kind of a mixed bag, to be honest.
When we get to Saturday and Sunday, are you thinking about a race win, or are you thinking about the championship? How do you balance the two?
I mean, in the end, if you look at the Intercontinental points, which is what we're here for, you have 20-something cars with world-class driver lineups from every manufacturer. So to win our championship, which is Intercontinental. At the end of the day, you're going to have to win this race. And I'd certainly love to add that trophy to the collection.
Outstanding. Well, we wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, man.
So Nick Foster, good character, came to race Formula Ford in the UK, went back to Australia, won the Porsche Carrera Cup Australia, and now on the Asian scene, doing a great job in GT racing. Of course, he drove for Porsche for a few years in European sports car events, but now part of the Hub Auto Ferrari camp. Pit lane's getting a bit busier, circuit a little quieter, but not that much.
14 minutes, just down to 14 minutes.
Do we have a car that's stationary? Because there's one on our tracking map that's not moving, and it's the Bohemia Energy Racing with Scuderia Praha, Ferrari, Vieri Passaro, Gabriele Lancieri, Josef Krahn, and Matteo Marucelli.
So whereabouts on them? Oh, that's the corner 14, is it? Oh, that's car 14.
And it's still in the sector. It's in the last sector.
Yeah.
It's not come up on our timing screen. Oh, now it's moved. No, it's not. No. We might have a car stranded in the gloom.
Not a very good place to be stranded because a very quick part of the racetrack coming up into Blancpain. So it is, yes, indeed, it's the first part of Blancpain is basically two corners. The first part is a curve, the second part is a corner.
42, the Tomczyk, Edwards, Farfus BMW goes through. And it might, in terms of number 14, might have been pushed behind the barrier. It might be a transponder glitch because our camera crew, who have had a tough night and they've done a brilliant job with some great pictures for us, they cannot find that car. So anyway, the Czech team Ferrari hopefully won't have an issue, but that car being shown on the track map as stationary in a sector, it might be a transponder glitch.
Yeah, it sits in the pit lane according to timing and scoring. Frank Pereira, Lamborghini 519, 45th on a 23.186. Strange.
Just do the laps. No
but Frank Pereira, when he does quick laps, he doesn't just do the laps.
Just looking at other people that are improving. Ross Gunn up to 52nd. We need him with Michele Beretta, don't we? Gary Paffett's an improver, 25th in the Strecker Mercedes. So Gary now no longer in the DTM, won the championship last year and has moved to Formula E, but getting back behind the wheel of a real grunt and go GT car here.
Yeah, I mean you can't give up a habit of a lifetime. No. And to get behind the wheel of a racing car and compete here in Spa-Francorchamps. You know, you can do a season's racing here in one day.
It's true, isn't it? Yes. So it's Ferrari. No, it's not. It's Porsche, Ferrari, Lamborghini, Audi, Lamborghini, Porsche, Mercedes, Audi, Lamborghini, Audi for the top 10 in the night session. Quite a few now. If they've done what they need to do, starting to call it a day.
Yeah, I mean the pit lane, the top 35, there's just about half of the field are in the pit lane, and I would imagine there's probably not a massive amount of enthusiasm to go back out. They've done what they've here to do. They've qualified all their drivers. It was the teams that were a 4-driver lineup that maybe had the bigger task to fulfill to ensure that those principally AM drivers did get track time and were able to get some consistency in their time behind the wheel as Ralph van Eyck and the 63 Lamborghini makes its way up the hill up towards Blancpain.
In Eichen's, I think we've said this before, an AM Plus or a Pro Minus. You know, he's not a Bortolotti or a Engelhardt, but he's certainly not an AM. He's a very, very good middle ground, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he's a good driver to have for a 24-hour, or in some cases in Paul Ricard, a 6-hour race.
Another graduate of the German Carrera Cup scene and the 24-hour series. So Rolf Eichen goes over the timing line down towards La Source, picking his way through the traffic. Had an improvement from Hendrik Still's Ferrari, one of the Rinaldi cars, number 33. Jamie Green's at the wheel of the green Audi, number 129, the Monteplast Racing by Land car. That's Wolfgang Land's team, and Hendrik Still goes up to 10th fastest. Good effort, that.
Yeah, and Gary Paffett improves one place as well, up to 9th, so a little bit of movement still with just 10 minutes of the session remaining. So drivers out still pushing, exploring the limits of the racetrack in darkness and understanding what the racetrack's going to give them, so they when they get in to do their nighttime stints, they're not going to be surprised. But of course, there may be a big surprise for them come Saturday evening, and that could be in the form of a very changeable Saturday night.
9.5 minutes are on the clock, and seeing that we're making Ryan work hard, we fired him in the direction of Michael Christensen, Porsche number 20, the car currently quickest in this session. Ryan. We'll have another go at Michael Christensen in a couple of minutes once our little gremlin has been eradicated. It's been a long night for us all. Gary Paffett, Hendrik Still have been the improvers. There's the Raton Lamborghini going into its pit box. 9 minutes to go. Nearly beer o'clock, say the mechanics, or county o'clock if they're an Italian team.
There's not going to be much of either of that, I would have imagined. I think if they're going to do it, it's going to be earlier in the week. It'll certainly be water o'clock, I can assure you, because all these cameramen who've been out around the circuit more or less since, what, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock this afternoon, they are also, we were talking about the corner workers, but these cameramen are doing an absolutely sterling job, and hopefully they are being refreshed on a regular basis, and they will need it.
That's true. But on the flip side, they've had an entire afternoon of listening to us. I mean, what more could anyone want, John?
I think a lot of water.
And earplugs, yes. Yeah. 8 minutes are on the clock, and it's thankfully, final word to touch, been a session of limited drama. We haven't had too much strife. We had an accident for Sally Yolok this morning in the free practice session, the car repaired, but thankfully most people have got through the evening and the afternoon without too much drama.
Yes, I think that the dramas occurred earlier in the week, particularly at Radio on the top of Eau Rouge. You know, a very quick part of the circuit. If you get it wrong, then it will be a big shunt, whatever way you look at it. So far today, otherwise, the two incidents that occurred were, in relative terms, minors. The Audi is the one that was the possibility, the 17 Audi, with Alex McDowell behind the wheel. That was the one that may be a bit more of a problem for WRT to resolve, to try and get on top of that car. We haven't seen out since it was damaged, so it would indicate the damage goes beyond simply taking a suspension corner off and replacing it.
Not had anything from the stewards suggesting they're needing extra time or a change of car or anything like that, so let's wish them well. Ferdinand Habsburg, it's a good job that you don't need to put your name on the side of the car, or all of it at least. It's not that long a car. Habsburg 42nd in this session, but as we keep making the point, just doing these regulation laps.
Yeah, and he talked about nighttime driving, getting his clipping points, getting the headlights, all the things that can make the nighttime drive a more enjoyable experience. And going back to the theme of some drivers thrive in nighttime conditions, and others it's a bit of a wake up, literally and metaphorically. Suddenly you're doing 170 miles an hour on parts of the racetrack, and you don't have this peripheral vision thing, which I think is such a fundamental part of being a racing driver. Good peripheral vision is essential, and then with that, then you get the ability to have time and space behind the wheel, and you're not driving under self-induced pressure.
So the teams, unless they are in Superpole, don't have any huge priority tomorrow. There is the warm-up session, but it's not compulsory, so it's at their discretion.
The only reason people may run in the warm-up session is if in the event we have a weather front coming in and it comes in more early. I mean, there was a quick shower of rain earlier in the afternoon.
Yeah.
The concern will be that if there is no major rainfall before Saturday afternoon when the race starts, nobody will have had any effective wet weather running on wet weather tyres, and that's going to be a problem for a lot of people, and not so much for the professionals but for those further down the field. And it is, I don't know what you do, whether you, if that were to be the case, you start the race under a safety car and allow people to get a feel for the racetrack and feel for where the water might be lying, because if it's going to be as heavy as they're predicting, there will unquestionably be standing water on parts of the circuit. So you want to be aware of where that is, not go blindly, and literally you will be blinded by the spray, into a situation where you could be out of your depth. Another pun, but unintended.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. So Kevin S. presses on. The Kevin Estre we have now is perhaps a more rounded driver than that rather raw one that I talked about earlier in the night, making his incident coming out of the pit lane. Fans on top of the pit lane at the Brasserie, enjoying themselves.
They're probably saying, why do we have to come to this noisy? We could have having a great time here and look partying and.
But it wouldn't have the same atmosphere if it weren't for the car.
No, of course not.
Alessandro Pierguidi, who we can still remember having that enormous lose from the front row of the grid.
Well, I asked them the question.
Yeah.
Before I said, you know, basically, can you get through turn 1 without an incident? And it was almost, he felt insulted. And what happens is he spins 360 in front of the entire field and nobody hit him. It was an amazing getaway.
It was. That was a race that had plenty of dramas to come after it, the first third of the race. Anyway, let's hope this year's is going to be dramatic, but for all the right reasons. I still can't get over the entry. I know we've touched on it, and we've mentioned many, not all, but many of the star names. And then, you know, the Pro class itself has 36 cars. Then you go down to Pro-Am and you find Giancarlo Fisichella nestling in a Pro-Am Ferrari. Other people with great CVs. Here you've got Clio Cup champion, touring car race winner Tom Onslow Cole. No slouch in rallycross machinery either, Tom. He's in that Pro-Am Ram Racing Mercedes. Ramon Voss, quick driver, the money behind it, a bit wild on occasions, but developing, and Tom's trying to calm him down and coach him and move him forwards.
Yes, the creme de la creme.
There is the Ram Racing Mercedes. On the road winners of Pro-Am at Silverstone before a penalty came, so very, very frustrated they were after that, but these things happen. So 26th TOC is. Tom's wife, part of the Bentley PR operation for the weekend, so she's trying to keep an eye on that as well as the Bentley squad of the works cars and the Team Parker Racing entry. More and more are going for the pit lane now, so the road is getting clear. And Tom Onslow Cole will probably squeeze one more lap out of this session if he desires.
Well, if he's in that little rhythm and he's happy out there and everything's going as it ought to do, metronomically again, as we keep using that particular word. So he'll, 2 minutes 28 seconds. Well, there's somebody popped off. Yes, there is.
Yes,
I think
there's dust, there's smoke,
lots of it,
and that's coming into the bus stop. The car in question has got going again.
I think he might have, whoever the car in question was, he must have kicked up a bit of dust from the side of the racetrack. So didn't see where any car was. So one more lap and that'll be it. 2 minutes and 7 seconds of this session remaining. So when they come across for the next time, assuming they come across the finish line, he might just decide to drive back into the pits.
Indeed so. So less than a lap time left in the session. Now the officials will go through all the data to make sure that each driver has done the regulation number of laps, and if not, the stewards are going to be busy again. Teams with their neon boards ready to receive the cars down the pit lane, so you know where you're aiming for. And they've been making a point. Precision in these pit stops, absolutely crucial. The theoretical best time in this session, if you take the sectors together, one of Nick Cassidy and 2 of Daniel Serra, is a 2:19.994, and yet it's Kevin Estre's Porsche that's quicker than the car whose drivers would have done the theoretical best lap time. There's 117, that's the El Bamba driven Porsche.
Yeah, currently 6th place.
Another potential winner, as are half the grid.
I think anybody in the top 35, okay, top 20 for sure. And Christopher Hasse just popped up into the 11th position in his 25 Audi, 21.648.
So Kevin Estre, the fastest by 0.277 of a second. Nobody has been able to rival that time since he set it. The flag is imminent. Bernard Delhay comes in, Stan Skockhorst is in, David Vigon, Mikael Jensen, Martin Tomczyk, Ralph Bowen, Alberto Di Falco, Jelmer Berman, the pit lane getting busier and busier and busier. Loic Deman has also come in the Herbie livery Porsche. Matteo Marucelli, I think we saw with a little bit of damage on the front earlier, didn't we? That car has pitted. The Scuderia Praha Ferrari. And Christopher Hasse has just gone up to 11th in the Santa Lock Audi, number 25. That could also be a
well, that's up there for
car.
sure, absolutely. That car more than capable. Had one Zandvoort, mind you, it was only a 1 hour race, but I mean, Christopher Hasse, again, one of those Audi centrally contracted drivers.
And he's won the event before, Santa Lock's won it before.
he wears these pink racing boots.
Really?
I never noticed it. I probably had, but I noticed it in Zandvoort, and those were his lucky race boots.
All right, okay. So we need to do a footwear check on the grid, see what he's got. Flag out, as you can see. So NP finish, night practice comes to an end.
Come Ledegar, the 59 Aston Martin, 46th. David Pirelli, 43rd, and the 333 Ferrari. I don't know what I can read into any of this. I mean, it's all... I mean, Jack Hawksworth in the 43 Mercedes, all the way down in 58th, that car in 58th. Some slightly out of position. Driver car pairings. '66 Audi, 45th. Milan Donji behind the wheel. Tony Villander, 41st in the Ferrari. Jan Fisichella, 42nd in the Ferrari. These times, I mean, they're not going to relate to what's going to happen in the race. All they are is a series of times recorded by drivers of each car, and that's it.
Yeah, indeed. As we've been saying, it fills the regulations requirement. So still, I've resisted asking you to pick a winner because I don't have a pin for you to stick into the entry list, but it's a bit like that.
If you had maybe half a dozen cars, you might have to sort of take a punt on it. There's too many cars, too many driver pairings, too many top teams. All I feel is that this race will be won by the team that makes the least amount of errors on racetrack and can turn that car around in the pit lane within the regulated times and make no mistakes, hit their marks, and that's where your winner's going to come from. And if you think back 1 year ago, I don't think anybody had a clue that the Vulcanhorst BMW would end up winning.
No, indeed.
But it may be a race of surprises.
So people now down the pit lane, and that brings to an end the Thursday of the Spa 24-hour weekend, the Total 24 hours of Spa. Tomorrow, in terms of the GT cars, they have the warm-up session, and then we have Super Pole. Let's have a quick run through the order. As we've been saying, these are of academic interest these times, but Kevin Est doing the best time ahead of the Hub Auto Corsa Ferrari, the Cassidy Foster Daniel Serra car. Have to be renamed as Nick Serra, won't it, to go with Nick Cassidy and Foster. Then Lamborghini third, Audi taking fourth, Lamborghini fifth, Porsche sixth. Best Mercedes seventh, Timo Boguslavski's car that he shared with Nico Bastien and Felipe Fraga. Jamie Green, Ricardo Fella and Christopher Mies eighth in the Land Audi from Gary Paffett's Stracker Mercedes number 44, and 10th Hendrik Still doing a good job in the Rinaldi racing car that he shares with Christian Hook, Alexander Matschel and Manuel Lauk. Hendrik Still, another underrated driver, very rapid indeed. The rest of the 71 strong order scrolls through. So the one we were missing was number 17 after the damage for Alex McDowell, the WRT Audi, but we'll wait and see. That's a car that does need the warm-up session to make sure that everything's pointing in the right direction before the race. There'll be a raft of discussions going on, and no doubt some more penalties to catch up on tomorrow when we get to the warm-up, all of which will affect the grid, and of course stop-go penalties that are offered into the race will have a bearing as well. So there's much to catch up on tomorrow when we get the warm-up session underway. And there you see the remainder of the times. Matthias Besch along with Benny Simmons and Philippe Descamps, John Shen in the Porsche. Andy Merrick, good to have him on the grid. His Bentley 53rd, that's the Team Parker racing car. Andy, the man behind the BRDC's Superstars programme now to look after young British talent. Seb Morris, 60th, but Seb having his first works outing in a Bentley. He's been driving for Team Parker and then the JRM squad in British GT over the last few years, but now being given the call to go and be a factory peddler. And at the foot of the times, Sun Xingzhu, Jeffrey Lee, Andrew Harrianto and Yasser Shahin, the owner of the Australian circuit, The Bend. So that is the order at the end of night practice, with Kevin Est's Porsche being the fastest. So a quick look at some of the easily spotted highlights of that session, and Kevin Est setting the gun time, the 107 Bentley with its very distinctive front blasting out of the pit road, and the temperature's almost manageable for the team. As now the 72 Ferrari hustled on. That car was, for the SMP racing team, quite a long way down in the end, but again, the lap times of limited importance there. Missing out the braking area completely was the Sky-backed Chris Froggatt Ferrari, and a spin also for 488 Ferrari down at Brussels. There was that slow release for number 62 Aston Martin when that got going. And at the end of the night, it is Porsche that tops the times. Super Pole, though, is the real focus of tomorrow to determine how the top 10 rows on the grid are going to line up. From Ryan Marine, John Watson and David Addison, for now, it's good night, and we'll be with you again tomorrow here from Spa. Bye for now.